there are three politicians that are now calling for the current administration to not reappoint Jerome Powell as the Federal Reserve Chair. What does that mean? The Federal Reserve Chair is not an elected official, it's an appointed official. So we elect politicians into positions of power. They then have the opportunity for certain places of influence in the government or in organizations to appoint people to those seats. So we don't get to elect everyone, but we do get to elect the politicians. And so one of those seats is obviously the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell was appointed back in 2017 by President Donald Trump, and it is a 4-year appointment. So when you get appointed, basically you're signing up for a 4-year kind of job stint. And then at the end of your job stint, the first 4 years, you can get reappointed. If the president is the same and you've done a good job, you're likely to get reappointed. Sometimes if you've done a good job and the presidential administration has changed, you may not get reappointed. And then obviously if you did a bad job in the eyes of those making the appointment decisions, you could also get fired as well. So when you think about this, it is normal for this conversation to come up when we get towards the end. So 2017, we're in 2021 now. The term actually expires in February of this upcoming year. And so far, President Joe Biden, his White House or his administration has not said whether they are going to reappoint Jerome Powell or not. Now, I want to read just a sentence or two from the full statement from these three politicians. One is AOC, the second is Rashida Tlaib, I believe is how you pronounce it, and Ayanna Presley are the three politicians. And it says, quote, as news of the possible reappointment of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell circulates, we urge President Biden to reimagine a Federal Reserve focused on eliminating climate risk and advancing racial and economic justice. Now, when you think about this, it is pretty interesting because what they're talking about explicitly is eliminating climate risk and advancing racial and economic justice. And so when you ask yourself, well, what is the job of the Federal Reserve, right? What is that job? We can go to federalreserve.gov, and this is exactly, I'm just going to read you word to word what they say. What is the purpose of the Federal Reserve System? Federal Reserve System, often referred to as the Federal Reserve or simply the Fed, is the central bank of the United States. It was created by the Congress to provide the nation with a safer, more flexible, and more stable monetary and financial system. The Federal Reserve was created on December 23, 1913, when President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. Today, the Federal Reserve's responsibilities fall into 4 general areas. Those 4 areas are the following. 1, conducting the nation's monetary policy by influencing money and credit conditions in the economy in pursuit of full employment and stable prices. First category of the Federal Reserve's role is to pursue full employment and stable prices. Second, supervising and regulating banks and other important financial institutions to ensure the safety and soundness of the nation's banking and financial system and to protect the credit rights of consumers. So the second thing is to regulate the banks to create that safety and soundness of the banking and financial system. The third thing is maintaining the stability of the financial system and containing systemic risk that may arise in financial markets. So systemic risk, eliminate, and contain any of those risks. The fourth thing, providing certain financial services to the U.S. government, U.S. financial institutions, and foreign official institutions, and playing a major role in operating and overseeing the nation's payment systems. Okay, this is interesting. There's 4 things that the Federal Reserve is focused on, or 4 general areas. The first, conducting the monetary policy with the pursuit of full employment and stable prices. That's 1. 2 is supervising and regulating banks with a goal of ensuring safety and soundness of the nation's banking and financial system. Okay, that makes sense. 3, maintaining the stability of the financial system and containing systemic risk. Makes sense. 4, providing certain financial services to the U.S. government and other types of organizations, and operating and overseeing the nation's payment systems. Got it. All that makes sense to me. Let's go back to the statement from these 3 politicians. They want to reimagine a Federal Reserve focused on eliminating climate risk and advancing racial and economic justice. When you compare what these politicians are asking versus the directive, the mandate of the Federal Reserve, they don't match. Now, again, that's not to say that eliminating climate risk and advancing racial and economic justice is important or not important. It's just that's not the job of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve's job is in the 4 areas that we just discussed. And so I am incredibly critical of the monetary policy decisions that get made many times. I'm incredibly critical in terms of the way that we are shared information in terms of inflation and other monetary impact, and also fiscal policy. But at the same time, I think it's important for critics to also be intellectually honest and say, hey, there are things to critique, but there's also things that we must not allow to enter into the conversation that don't necessarily have anything to do with what the Federal Reserve's mandate is. So if we go and we actually look at the 4 things that the Federal Reserve is supposed to be focused on, it has nothing to do with eliminating climate risk and has nothing to do with advancing racial or economic justice. Now, you can argue that there could be the impact of these things, but that is not ultimately the mandate that we've given them. One of the questions could be, maybe we should change the Federal Reserve's mandate. That could be up for debate. And if our elected officials and others in appointed positions desire to change the mandate of the Federal Reserve to include these things, that'd be a whole different conversation. But as it stands today, the Federal Reserve is not mandated with doing any of these things. Instead, it is focused on the 4 things that we just described. So if we go at the bottom here, there's one other sentence I want to read, which says, to move forward with a whole of government approach that eliminates climate risk while making our financial system safer, we need a chair who is committed to these objectives, and we urge the Biden administration to use the opportunity to appoint a new Federal Reserve chair. Now, there is the mention right there of the financial system safer, but the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to eliminate climate risk or advance racial and economic justice does not really coincide with the current mandate. And so it brings up the question of, should we change the mandate, or should we simply say, hey, we have to govern, or we have to judge the success of the Federal Reserve based on the 4 criteria, the 4 areas of focus. Now, there could be a strong argument to be made that one of the things that the government is supposed to be focused on, or the Federal Reserve is supposed to be focused on, is stable prices. Well, we don't have stable prices in America. We have CPI of over 5%. So if we don't have stable prices, you could argue that they are not doing a good job of meeting that mandate. The second thing is that they're supposed to be full employment. They're supposed to pursue that full employment. And again, employment has gotten better over the last few months, but we still don't have full employment. And so you could again argue that they're not doing a good job with that mandate. So there's plenty of what I would consider healthy and accurate critiques of the work that's being done. But I don't think that it is fair to say that the Federal Reserve is not focused on eliminating climate risk or advancing racial and economic justice, because that is not their mandate. It would be like going into a high school classroom in a math class and saying, hey, you didn't answer any of the history questions. And the kid would say, yeah, because I'm in math class, right? I'm focused on math. You're judging me on my math skills. You're not focused in judging me on my history skills. And so I think that we have to be very, very careful here that we don't allow conversation in social media from politicians, et cetera, to start to actually shape monetary policy, right? Or to shape the Federal Reserve. And what I mean by that is one of the key components of a central bank that makes it effective is that it is independent. It actually is not subject to the whims of the political environment, nor of individual politicians. That was true of the Republicans when President Trump was in office. It's also true of these politicians, right? It doesn't matter which side of the aisle. It doesn't matter what their agenda is. The central bank should be independent of that political environment. And so I think that this is pretty eye-opening in terms of reminding ourselves, what are the mandates of the Federal Reserve? They don't include these things around climate risk and racial and economic justice. And so if we would like them to now have that mandate, we can go and try to add that. But I don't think that you can actually ask for the non-reappointment of Chairman Jerome Powell based on this criteria. There's plenty of other arguments you could make that I think would be much better received than making these. Hey guys, bang bang. Thanks so much for watching the Best Business Show today. And don't forget to check out our partner, SoFi. They make all this possible. They're a super app that lets you save, spend, borrow, earn, and invest all from one single platform. And if you go there today and you sign up for a SoFi Invest account, you can get between $5 and $1,000 for free from SoFi. Not everyone's obviously going to get $1,000, but everyone gets something. Don't say that I never did anything for you. Go check them out at SoFi.com/pomp, download the app, and go ahead and open an account. SoFi.com/pomp, and make sure you come back and watch more of the Best Business Show. We're going to build the biggest business show in the world, and we need your help.